Two best friends, Jane and David, discover a forbidden world hidden in the glow of a phone screen, their innocent laughter replaced by whispered secrets. Curiosity drives them to cross a line they never imagined, shaking their friendship and innocence forever. When their mothers uncover the truth, a shocking decision threatens to change their lives completely. This is a story of friendship, mistakes, and a hard lesson that will stay with them forever. In a busy Lagos compound, Mama Jane and Mama David lived side by side. They were close friends despite having very different parenting styles. Mama Jane was strict and believed in rules, while Mama David was easygoing and rarely raised her voice. Both women worked hard at the market, leaving little time for their children, Jane and David. Jane and David, both 12 years old, had grown up together like siblings. They shared secrets, did homework, and played games around the compound. Their laughter filled the yard, bringing life to their little world. One evening during dinner, David said, "Mama, I need a phone. All my classmates have one." Mama David paused, surprised. "A phone? Don't you think you're too young for that?" "But Mama," David replied, "I can use it for schoolwork, not just games." Mama David thought for a moment. "If you come first in your class this term, I'll buy you a phone." From that day, David worked harder than ever, determined to earn the phone. Jane noticed his dedication and teased him about it, but David stayed focused. His hard work paid off when he proudly showed his report card, claiming the top spot in his class. True to her word, Mama David bought David a shiny new iPhone. It was better than he ever imagined, and he was thrilled. The phone quickly became his favorite possession. He used it for games, cartoons, and exploring the internet. Jane often joined him, and the two spent hours laughing at funny videos and sharing games. One sunny afternoon, David and Jane sat in his room scrolling through the phone. "Let's see what else we can find," David said. Jane nodded, curious about the endless possibilities the phone offered. The phone brought them closer, but it also introduced them to things they didn't fully understand. They stumbled upon an unfamiliar app with strange videos. At first, they were confused, but their curiosity grew. The videos showed adults doing things the children couldn't comprehend. "What are they doing?" Jane whispered. David hesitated. "I think it's something adults do," he replied. They didn't understand, but the mystery drew them in. "Let's keep this a secret," David said. Jane agreed, though a part of her felt uneasy. From that moment, their afternoons took a different turn, and the once innocent laughter of their friendship began to change. With their mothers often at the market, David and Jane continued to watch the strange videos in secret. Whenever they were alone, they locked themselves in David's room, exploring the hidden world on his phone. The content was confusing but fascinating, and it became their new routine. Their innocent laughter was replaced by hushed whispers and stolen glances. They stopped playing outside and doing homework together. Instead, their bond revolved around the secrets they shared. One day, Jane's uneasiness grew. "Do you think it's bad we're watching these videos?" she asked. David looked uncomfortable. "It's just videos, Jane. We're not doing anything wrong." "But what if Mama finds out?" Jane pressed. "She won't," David replied firmly. "We just have to keep it a secret." Jane nodded, but her guilt lingered. Days turned into weeks, and their afternoons remained consumed by the videos. Then one day, Jane suggested something that shocked David. "What if we try doing what they do in the videos?" she asked. David froze. "No, Jane, that's not a good idea." But Jane's curiosity was stronger than her fear. She kept asking until David reluctantly agreed. They didn't realize how much their decision would change everything. When Jane and David decided to mimic the videos, they didn't know what to expect. One quiet afternoon, while their mothers were at the market, they locked themselves in David's room. "Are you sure about this?" David asked nervously. Jane nodded. "Let's just try." As they began, Jane felt a sharp pain and quickly told David to stop. She ran out of the room, tears streaming down her face. David was left feeling ashamed and guilty. For days, Jane avoided David. She wouldn't talk to him or even look at him. David felt terrible but didn't know how to apologize. Finally, at school, he approached her. "I'm sorry, Jane. he said softly. "I shouldn't have agreed." Jane hesitated before nodding. "It's okay. Let's just forget about it." Their friendship slowly returned to normal, but things were different. The innocence they once shared was gone. Then one day, Jane surprised David again. "I think we should try it again," she said bluntly. David stared at her, shocked. "Jane, no! The last time—" "This time will be different," Jane interrupted. "Please, David, don't disappoint me." David didn't want to say yes, but he couldn't bear to upset her. One day after school, Jane and David decided to stay behind in an empty classroom. Most of the students and teachers had gone home and the school was quiet. "Are you sure about this?" David whispered nervously. Jane nodded. "We'll be quick. No one will know." They slipped into the school toilet, their hearts pounding with fear and anticipation. Just as they were about to begin, the sound of footsteps echoed down the corridor. "Someone's coming!" David hissed, grabbing Jane's arm. Panic set in as the footsteps grew louder. They bolted out of the toilet, running in different directions. It was the school security guard making his routine rounds. Fortunately, he didn't see them, but the close call left them shaken. That evening, back at home, Jane turned to David. "We have to try again, this time at home." David hesitated, fear evident in his eyes. "I don't know, Jane. What if someone catches us?" "No one's here," Jane insisted. "Our mothers won't be back for hours." Reluctantly, David agreed. They went to his room and locked the door. But just as they were about to start, the sound of the front door opening startled them. "Samuel, are you home?" Mama David's voice rang out. David and Jane froze, their faces pale with fear. Mama David's footsteps approached the room. "Why is this door locked?" she asked, knocking firmly. Scrambling to cover up, David quickly unlocked the door. Mama David stepped in, her sharp eyes scanning the room. Something about their behavior seemed off. "What's going on here?" she asked, her voice firm. Jane looked down, unable to meet her gaze. David stammered, trying to come up with an excuse, but his mother wasn't convinced. "Both of you sit down," Mama David commanded. "Now tell me the truth. What have you been doing?" The children exchanged nervous glances. They knew they couldn't hide the truth any longer. With trembling voices, they confessed everything. The videos, their curiosity, and their attempts to imitate what they had seen. Mama David listened in stunned silence. Her heart sank with every word. She felt a wave of guilt. How had she missed this? Taking a deep breath, she said, "Stay here. I need to talk to Mama Jane." She walked across the compound to tell Mama Jane everything, setting the stage for a difficult conversation between the two mothers. Mama Jane's face turned pale when she heard what Mama David had to say. She stood abruptly, pacing the room. "This is all Jane's fault," she snapped. "She's the one leading David astray." Mama David shook her head. "No, it's not just Jane. Both of them are involved. We need to handle this together as mothers." Mama Jane sat down, her usual strict demeanor softened by worry. "What do we do?" she asked quietly. "We need to talk to them," Mama David replied. "But more importantly, they need help. Therapy, counseling, whatever it takes to guide them back on the right path." The two mothers returned to David's house, where Jane and David sat nervously. They explained to the children the dangers of what they had been watching and why their actions were harmful. Though their tone was gentle, the children could feel the weight of their disappointment. After the talk, both mothers agreed to seek professional help for Jane and David. They realized their parenting styles needed to change. Mama Jane decided to be more open and trusting with Jane, while Mama David promised to balance her leniency with proper guidance. The next step was to mend the damage that had been done. The children began therapy sessions with a counselor, where they could talk about their actions and understand their consequences. The sessions were difficult at first, but slowly Jane and David started to open up. The counselor explained the importance of making better choices and how their curiosity had led them into dangerous territory. Jane learned to express her feelings more openly, while David realized the importance of boundaries and responsibility. Meanwhile, the two mothers worked to rebuild trust with their children. Mama Jane spent more time with Jane, sharing stories and engaging in activities that strengthened their bond. Mama David, on the other hand, became more attentive to David, ensuring he understood the importance of safe phone use. The therapy sessions and parental guidance began to show results. Jane and David gradually returned to their old selves, their innocence restored. They started playing outside again, laughing and enjoying the simple joys of childhood. But despite the progress, the bond between the two families wasn't the same. The incident had left a lasting impact, and Mama Jane made a difficult decision. It was time to move to another state, to give Jane a fresh start. The day of the move arrived quickly. As the moving truck pulled into the compound, Jane and David stood quietly, knowing this was goodbye. "I'm going to miss you," Jane said softly. David nodded. "Me too, but I think this is for the best." Their mothers exchanged a final hug, both silently agreeing that this was the right decision. Mama Jane hoped the change would give Jane a chance to grow without the shadow of the past hanging over her. As the truck drove away, David stood by the gate, watching until it disappeared from sight. He felt a mix of sadness and relief. He had learned a hard lesson, one that would stay with him for the rest of his life. Back in the compound, things felt quieter without Jane. David focused on his studies and hobbies, determined to make better use of his time. He stayed close to his mother, who now made sure to be more involved in his life. Though they were apart, both Jane and David carried the lessons they had learned, knowing it was a turning point in their lives. Life in the compound gradually returned to normal, but the memory of what had happened stayed with both families. The incident became a powerful reminder of the importance of parental guidance and communication. Mama Jane and Mama David reflected on how their focus on work had left gaps in their children's lives. They vowed never to let that happen again. Mama Jane became more understanding, while Mama David balanced her easygoing nature with firm boundaries. For Jane and David, the experience taught them about responsibility and the dangers of curiosity without guidance. They learned the importance of making good choices and understanding the consequences of their actions. Though they no longer saw each other every day, Jane and David stayed in touch through letters and occasional phone calls. Their friendship was different now, but the bond they had shared as children remained. The story of their journey served as a reminder to others in the compound. Children need their parents' time and guidance, especially when it comes to technology. Phones can be valuable tools, but only when used responsibly. And so, life moved on, with both families carrying the lessons they had learned, determined to build a better future for their children.